Hi, I'm Lois Kolkhorst, Texas State Representative and also Chairman of the Public Health Committee in the Texas House of Representatives. Today, a lot of people are talking about the Affordable Care Act and what impact it has on their lives. It's a confusing conversation. Here in Texas, much of the focus has been on Medicaid expansion. So as the Chairman of Public Health, I've spent some time trying to look at the entire landscape and get the numbers, what the real numbers are. I'm going to walk you through something that's extremely complicated, and I'm going to blend some numbers to try to get apples to apples comparisons. But please walk with me, and maybe by the end of this we'll all have a better look at where the Affordable Care Act ends up in 2014 and beyond, and who truly will be uninsured after that. Here in Texas, we have a very high uninsured rate of 24%. That's according to the 2011 census numbers. So how does the Affordable Care Act impact that 24%? Well, without doing Medicaid expansion, that 24% actually drops to roughly 16% uninsured. Now that is a very sharp drop in our uninsured. In fact, the Medicaid conversation would have you believe that that biggest drop is from the Medicaid expansion group, but it's not. What would Medicaid expansion get? Well, actually, it drops the 16% uninsured down to roughly 12% if everyone signed up. So we move from 24 to 16%. What is that group? Well, we call this our subsidy or exchange group, is how you may hear them referred to. How many people are in that group? Those that qualify are 2.4 million people roughly, again, based off of 2011 census numbers. The Medicaid expansion group, how many people are in that group? Roughly 1.4 million people. Now that's not the number of people that actually will end up in those groups, because we have a fancy term called the take-up rate. What does the take-up rate mean? Well, people that qualify for different programs may not necessarily move into those programs. They may not sign up for those programs, and we have a great history with that. Take, for example, the Legislative Budget Board. They estimate that if we did Medicaid expansion in Texas, this group would be about 522,000 people, not 1.4 million people. The Health and Human Service Commission predicts this group to be roughly 776,000 people. Regardless, the conversation seemingly has been on Medicaid expansion being worth $4 billion in money to the state of Texas. If you look at the greatest decrease of uninsured, 24% down to 16%, seemingly people have not put a number to that. I'd like to give a number to that as I walk you through this bar graph. So the Affordable Care Act, how does it work? It's confusing, but I'm going to make it as simple as I can with a bar graph. The Affordable Care Act said 138% of the federal poverty level and below are going to be covered by Medicaid expansion. Everyone above that was to be covered by what? The subsidies or through the exchange group. Again, roughly 2.4 million people that qualify for that. Because of an interesting quirk in the law, it actually allows 100% of FPL and above to be covered by subsidies in the exchange group. So we move those people into the better paying universe of what? Private or commercial insurance. That's important. Let's put some numbers to what we predict this to be. The Health and Human Service Commission in the year 2015 says the take-up rate is going to be about 776,000. Again, the LBB predicts a lower number, 522,000. But let's break these numbers up. So, if this were going to be 776,000 people, then if we get to move this strata up into the universe, which is a better paying universe, how many is that? That's predicted to be 263,000 people. How many does that leave uninsured that would have qualified for Medicaid? That leaves roughly 513,000 people in what I like to refer to as the pink box. Okay, what does this mean economically to the state of Texas? Again, lots of focus has been given to the Medicaid expansion, with people in that conversation that want us to do Medicaid expansion. Keep in mind, without doing Medicaid expansion, this number becomes what? That number actually becomes 15%. Why? Because we pick up a percentage point in this box here. Again, 100% of FPL and above move into commercial insurance, a better payer for all of our providers. We have more doctors that want to see them. Now keep in mind too that legal documented residents are covered down to 0% of FPL with a subsidy. So they move into this group right here. What's the economic impact for our healthcare system? Our economic impact for our healthcare system predicted in the years, the biennium 2014 and 2015, according to the Texas Department of Insurance, is what? That number is $9.7 billion that will be paid to through the premiums to commercial insurance that will then spin out into our healthcare system. $9.7 billion compared to the $4 billion number that people and the conversation has really focused on. Let's look at the years, the next biennium beyond that. Let's look at 2016 and 17. This number, this universe of people, actually grows, and so do the payments to our healthcare system. This number becomes $25.9 billion that will move into the market to our healthcare providers without Medicaid expansion. Again, let me talk about the two numbers. $9.7 billion without Medicaid expansion, with the bump of the people moving from Medicaid actually into commercial insurance all the way up to 400% FPL. And that number is only a take-up rate of the first year of 20% and the second year 35%. That number is probably a low number and will grow because predictably the take-up rate could be a lot higher. This take-up rate down here is based off of a number that is much higher. The LBB base there is off of 52%. This number escalates to a 65% take-up rate, which again is very consistent with what HHSC and the LBB predict in the second biennium. So let's focus on the pink box. You may say to me, Lois, what about that pink box? We're not covering the pink box. And I would agree. Without doing Medicaid expansion, they still, about 513,000 in the year 2015, won't be covered. But in Texas, we have something that was applied for, and a lot of people worked hard on this, which is called an 1115 waiver from CMS. It's worth, over the next 4 years, about $29 billion. There's just over 200 projects that will come out of this $29 billion. It's over $2 billion that are actually going to help us expand our community clinics all throughout the state of Texas. And I also want to talk about a very robust system that we have through federally qualified health centers, which is your tax dollars, federal tax dollars, going to set up community health centers throughout the state of Texas, which is very different than those health centers. But they are all designed to help cover not just the pink box, but also this 12% number that won't ever be covered by the Affordable Care Act. So these are lots of numbers, and it's a very confusing system which we are working toward. But needless to say, there certainly is a very large, dramatic, and sharp decrease of uninsured from 24% to 15% without Medicaid expansion here in Texas. Thank you for sticking with me through this whole presentation. It's somewhat of a simplistic view of something that's extremely complicated. As you can see, there are big dollars that are coming out in the future with the Affordable Care Act without Medicaid expansion. This is not to debate the merits of the Affordable Care Act, but to better understand what the Affordable Care Act means to Texas starting in the year 2014 when it is the law of the land. As each state makes its decisions how to best serve its state, I hope this gives you more information about what we're doing here in Texas, making the best decision for you. I look forward to working with you, and may God continue to bless the great state of Texas.